Hello fellow Hell Let Loose players, Burning Ricky here. And as always, I like to thank everyone for all the likes and comments on the previous videos. And welcome all the new people who subbed to my channel. And I did some research the last weeks and asked players what they hated or disliked the most in Hell Let Loose. And boy, I did not realize some things really annoyed so many players. And it was interesting collecting all this information. Before I get started, I just want to say all these hated or disliked things are not in any special order. And the players I spoke to all love playing Hell Let Loose. They just get annoyed by some game elements. Now let's get started. Not being able to add partial supplies to a build. For example, you have 50 supplies but need 100 to make a tank repair station. The fact that you can't add the 50 supplies to the repair station and then later add another 50 is really annoying some players. Also, a lot of players who play as an engineer tell me the most annoying thing about building is that walls, bunkers and barbed wire blueprints are very whiny. And if the ground is not almost completely level, you just can't put the blueprint down. The building mechanic needs some more flexibility. Jumping over a fence or wall is too clumsy according to a lot of players, and most of them tell me that jumping over fences is too inflexible. If you're at a slight angle, you won't be able to jump over the fence. The new meta for landmines and satchel charges is really making players' blood boil. The odds of an enemy tank driving over a landmine on most maps is tiny. And then one drives over your landmine and they just drive off like nothing happened. It just makes players' blood boil, especially since the weakest part of a tank is the underside and its tracks. And the grind towards the level 9 assault class is really hard, and I mean really hard. And then you risk your own life, place a settle charge on a tank, it explodes and the tank still drives off. You probably killed more team members with that settle charge than anything else, and there is no payoff. And as a level 7 commander, I can tell you, no one ever asked me to spawn in a light tank. It has never happened. Every tanker wants a heavy or a medium tank. Most players agree that a settle charge should blow up any tank if you place it on the rear of the tank. It is its weakest spot after all. And the reactions to my video called 3 moments I almost rage quit does not lie. Players do not like this new meta. And another thing that came up quite a few times is the fact that the German anti-tank class gets 2 Panzerschrecks, but the American gets 4 bazooka rounds. Yet when you shoot an M4 Jumbo, the round bounces off just as many times as on a Tiger or a Panther. This inequality seems to rub a lot of players the wrong way. And in World War II, the Americans and the Germans made about the same amount of bazooka and Panzerschrecks, around 300,000, and that does not include Panzerfausts, because the Germans made around 6.7 million of those, according to Wikipedia. So it seems odd that the Americans carry 4 and the Germans only get 2 bazooka rounds. The new node system seems to be universally hated by many, and I mean many players. And let me quote a player who told me the following. The new node system is a ridiculous farce that shatters nearly any idea of a comeback mechanic and forces players to constantly engage now that they are destroyed with sector losses. The class points you get for helping to build them mount up to bribery and far outweigh points earned with combat effectiveness. I'm sure some people like building them, but I'm afraid I'm not willing to engage with the node system and hate it, even when it's all going well. End of quote. Do I need to say any more? I don't think so. And to stay on topic of the nodes, the removal of your own nodes and structures is way too slow and could be faster. Most players who play the engineer complain about having to relocate their nodes, but taking down their own nodes takes way too long. Players that don't have a mic or squad leaders that are too passive are also high on the list of what players of Hell Let Loose dislike. In a game in which teamwork is so important, all players need a mic, is what I hear all the time and time and time and time again. And I fully agree with this statement. Getting steamrolled because of unbalanced teams is another thing most players really dislike. People like to have long battles with teams that are equal in strength. And even the winning team, most of the time its players don't like winning fast. To quote a player, when we were talking about this, he said, and I quote, "There is little honor in steamrolling a noob team, and you earn relatively little experience. It can't compare with the adrenaline rush you get when you win a game in the last minutes of a battle against an opponent who is equally strong." And to add a personal comment, I can't agree with him more. He is absolutely 1000% right, in my humble opinion. And the feeling of pulling a victory out of the jaws of a defeat can't compare to the boring steamrolling of a noob enemy team. Some players think the submachine guns are now too weak and a little bit random if you miss or hit at range. The terms shooting with blanks or rubber bullets came up a lot, whilst other players dislike that Hell Let Loose devs brought all these automatic weapons into the game. This seems to be a mixed bag, either you hate it or you love it. Players alone in a tank seems to be very hated by all players. 99% of the players I spoke to mentioned this and think it is a waste of resources having one player in a tank. But some think a single tanker is better than no tank at all, but almost all players agree on one thing. If there are multiple tank squads with 1 or 2 players in them, they should merge into a 2 or 3 man squad. Players also told me that the warm-up time is utter nonsense. It was made so players with slower computers have the time to join the game, but during the warm-up you can still drive up to 400 meters towards the enemy and have an advantage. It makes little sense. Too much clutter on some maps because there is a lack of graphic settings, and once again I will quote a player. They really need to sort out their shit with more granular settings in anti-aliasing. Some maps like Utah now have so much visual clutter that their prescriptive settings really don't cut it. On that note, there is too much visual clutter. End quote. Also, lack of optimization is something that has been mentioned a lot. I will quote another player when he said, "Optimization. With each update, players lose FPS, aside from devs saying they optimize the game. This is the game that runs the worst of all my games in my Steam library." End quote. And he's not alone in thinking nor saying this. This came up quite a bit during the past weeks. The grass not showing up is also a big gripe, and most players are really annoyed by it. The time it takes for the grass to appear has been decreased since update 9, but it's still a thing in the game, and it should not be. And a lot of players I spoke and heard in Hell Let Loose complain about is the non-player made barbed wire on many maps that cannot be destroyed by a settle charge, and players think there is too much barbed wire on some maps and there needs to be a way to destroy it or make a hole in it. For example, the engineers should have a bolt cutter or Bangalore torpedo with him. The Bangalore torpedo, also known as a Bangalore pipe bomb, was used in World War II to just do that, destroy barbed wire. Players also think the support player who walks around with the supply and ammo crates and the level 3 has 2 ammo crates but does not have any hand grenades himself is just ridiculous. And on a personal note, I really agree with this. This class literally walks around with an ammo and heavy ammo crate, yet he has no hand grenades himself. It really makes no sense at all. I mean, he is carrying an ammo crate. The tanks and trucks getting stuck on things they should never get stuck on, like a small pole or an apple tree branch, still gets players' blood boiling. And this came up time and time again when I asked players what they hated or disliked most in Hell Let Loose. Granted, it has been made better since update 9, but can still be improved. Another thing with the truck that makes players scream WTF is when you hit the canvas on the back of a supply truck with a bazooka round and it does not destroy the truck and many times does not even kill the driver. Squads who don't defend and are just always attacking. Even if the team's objective is being taken by the enemy team, these zombie squads keep attacking. This really rubs a lot of players the wrong way. To quote a player, some squad leaders are just brain dead or have zero battlefield awareness. End quote. The garrison and outpost list in the spawn screen seems to trigger a lot of players as well. What are all those outposts of other squads doing in there? We just need our own outpost in it. Also, another outpost game element that players find annoying is when outposts are placed too close together and you keep clicking the wrong one, forcing you to zoom all the way in to click on the correct outpost, and by that time you have missed your spawn window. That players are able to click on the wrong outpost to spawn in should never exist in the game, according to many players I spoke to. The mic bug has got to be one of the most hated things in the game. In a game where communication is so important, perhaps the most important thing, everyone I spoke to really hated, and I mean hated, the mic bug. And yes, this is a bug and not a game feature, but almost everyone I spoke to mentioned this one and said it was game breaking. And this was the list I compiled with the things players hate the most in Hell Let Loose. There seems to be a lot Hell Let Loose developers can do to make the game a lot better and more player friendly. If they will ever do that, I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine. Let me know in the comment section what your biggest complaint is in Hell Let Loose. Well, I hope you all liked this video and found it interesting or enjoyable. And if you did, then help a fellow Hell Let Loose player out and hit that like button. And subscribe to the channel for future videos. I try to make at least one video a week. Also, I have a ton of useful, interesting and cool content, so check out my channel. My name is Burning Wiki, and see you all next time in Hell Let Loose.